Good. I want you all to understand, and I want the people of Spokane County to understand, this is the last type of press conference anybody in law enforcement leadership wants to have to give. And I find myself put back in the position of talking once again about Mr. Chamberlin's termination from the Spokane County Sheriff's Office, because Tuesday, when I read that former Deputy Craig Chamberlin was terminated for writing a letter, that causes me great problems. And here's why. Because it's not true. And these false statements that continue to be made by Mr. Chamberlin are quite frankly a reflection on the agency that he used to work for. He was a former member of law enforcement, and the last thing we should be doing is making false statements. And he continues to make false statements to you, the public. Mr. Chamberlin was not terminated for writing a letter. Mr. Chamberlin was terminated because he gave false and misleading statements to the internal affairs investigator involved in that case. He was terminated because he lied. And there's a couple of things that need to be made very clear. Mr. Chamberlin went to the Deputy Sheriff's Association and asked them to take up a grievance in reference to his termination. The Deputy Sheriff's Association took the matter to their attorneys, and their attorneys reviewed it. Not one, but two attorneys reviewed it, and they advised the Deputy Sheriff's Association not to take Mr. Chamberlin's grievance up because the case is airtight and the case says what it says. So the Deputy Sheriff's Association did not agree to take Mr. Chamberlin's termination grievance forward. That left Mr. Chamberlin with one other avenue to appeal his termination, and that was the Spokane County Civil Service. One of the things that Mr. Chamberlin said in the KXLY report was, the sheriff is trying to destroy my reputation and my image. I didn't do that, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Chamberlin did that. And Mr. Chamberlin is not being truthful with you as to the circumstances behind his termination. He was offered in January of 2022 to resign in lieu of termination. This was prior to his first disciplinary hearing. Mr. Chamberlin has told you in the media and the public that he didn't have any idea that he was going to get fired. How can that be when we offered to allow him to retire in lieu of termination in January, a month prior to his actual termination? As a matter of fact, he wants to call this political. This isn't political. If it was politics, I would have fired him in March of 2021 when he was accused of drug use and when he was accused of delivery of a controlled substance to a girlfriend. That is a felony. Everybody's known that Craig thought about running for sheriff for many years. If this was political, why didn't I fire him then? More importantly, why didn't I fire him in 2014 when he was rumbling about running for sheriff? And we had information and a complaint from an individual about Craig's antics in a YouTube video where he's seen drinking from a fake penis. Why didn't we fire him then? On this last Tuesday, after a scheduling hearing, because the civil service hearing was scheduled for April 19th, they had a scheduling hearing this Tuesday. After that meeting, Mr. Chamberlin approached the county's attorney, John Grosso, and asked, John, what do you think my odds are? Now, Mr. Grosso could not answer that question for Mr. Chamberlin. It would have been an ethics violation to do so. He does not represent Mr. Chamberlin. He represents the sheriff's office. John told him, I cannot give you legal advice. Mr. Chamberlin then asked, John, do you think the sheriff will allow me to resign? Now, ladies and gentlemen, that's a unique situation because he's already been terminated. His union did not take up his grievance. And I said, you know, John, we can treat it as any other negotiated settlement. We'll give him the same offer we gave him last January of you can retire in lieu of termination. We'll bridge your medical coverage for your family for 6 months, and we've done that in the past. And I said, but there's one caveat. Mr. Chamberlin needs to acknowledge that what is contained in our reports is truthful and accurate. And he has to acknowledge that what he has told the public about this being political is not. He has to be honest. That was the only caveat, ladies and gentlemen. We asked him to be honest. The next day, I wake up to more stories about how the Spokane County Sheriff's Office and myself have been horrible to Mr. Chamberlin. We've tried to help Mr. Chamberlin with his problems for over a decade. This is Mr. Chamberlin's doing. We tried to give him a soft landing on this one, an opportunity to resign in lieu of termination. Not once now, but twice. He did not accept that. He sent a letter to the Spokane Civil Service withdrawing his request for an appeal simply because he knew that he could not win that appeal. Because this case is as it says. Mr. Chamberlin lied to an investigator. Mr. Chamberlin has lied to the media, and Mr. Chamberlin continues to lie to the public. That's what bothers me the most, is the fact that we have a former law enforcement officer in our community continuing these falsehoods. And that's really all I have to say about it. This agency has tried to help Mr. Chamberlin, but Mr. Chamberlin decided a course of action. Mr. Chamberlin is the one that decided to file to run for public office 3 days before his termination in order to garner this type of coverage. I don't know why he would even want to do that. This is not good coverage. It's not good coverage for him, this community, or this agency. And I wish he would stop. Any questions?
If Chamberlin gets decertified, can he still run for office?
You bring up decertification. That is the next step that Mr. Chamberlin faces in his law enforcement career. Because he has been found to have a sustained finding of dishonesty, lying, two things are happening. One, the Spokane County Prosecutor's Office is going to put him on the Brady list, which means if he ever had to testify, he has to reveal that he has a sustained finding for dishonesty. I don't know if you understand, and I don't know if the citizens out there understand, the extreme liability that puts this community in if he were to become sheriff. Anytime he had to testify on behalf of the agency, a deputy within this agency, and for this community, he has to answer to a plaintiff's attorney, isn't it true that you have a sustained finding of dishonesty? The decertification aspect of this is the Washington Criminal Justice Training Center Commission will review the case, and if they find that he has a sustained finding, which he does, of dishonesty, they will decertify him in the state of Washington. I'm not sure where the legal boundaries actually fall down, if that actually precludes him from running for sheriff and being sheriff, but it would preclude him from being a commissioned law enforcement officer in the state. So if he were successful in this run, you would have a sheriff that would not be a professional certified peace officer in the state of Washington. He can't carry a gun.
And do you have any say in that process?
I will testify in that process, yes.
When you talked about offering him the option to resign in lieu of being fired again, I take it the answer based on what you were saying was no, he didn't accept that offer. Is that still on the table? Can you just be a little bit more?
More specific on that?
Yeah.
He didn't give us the courtesy of an answer. All we got was a letter saying he's withdrawing his appeal from civil service. He never answered and never talked to us. Matter of fact, my comment to my attorney was, let me get this straight, he didn't want to talk about this, and he hasn't. What he did was he got in front of cameras and said, the sheriff is a big mean person and is trying to ruin my reputation. That's what he did, knowing what he had on the table, and he could have had that, and quite frankly, he would have gone from being terminated to being retired in lieu of termination. It's his call. The offer was made.
Offer is made, no answer yet.
No
How
answer.
long will that be on the table?
Oh, that offer's gone. That ship has sailed. He withdrew his appeal. He has closed all avenues of appealing his termination. And again, his union said, no, we're not taking it because this is a tight case. He withdrew his appeal because he knew he was going to lose in front of that commission. And he continues to want to paint this agency as being the bad guys. Again, that speaks to the heart of his character.
So one of his defenses, one of the things he said in the past is, if I was so bad, why was I appearing on KHQ all the time, and why was I kind of the face of the department for so many years? How would you respond to that?
I'm glad you brought that up. There have been 2 PIOs in this agency since I've been sheriff. Dave Reagan and Mark Gregory. Now, how is Craig Chamberlin the face of this agency?
Those are just his words in terms
I
of
know.
KHQ.
It's another lie. And quite frankly, that one really does bother me also, because he says for 18 years he was the face of the agency. Let's do a timeline. Craig Chamberlin seems to forget that I've known him ever since he came to this agency. I was actually his field training officer. Craig Chamberlin worked in patrol. He worked in our traffic unit. And he started doing the traffic report. All right? That's all he did. He wasn't a PIO. He did the traffic report. He did a couple of side little things, you know, ask Deputy Craig type things. That's not being the face of the agency. And ladies and gentlemen, he was removed from those duties because in 2014, he started having an extreme problem with drinking. And then we received a complaint in January of 2014 that read, look at this. This guy is the agency. All over YouTube, drinking from a fake penis. You can still see that video. I will tell you that video is one of the videos that just make me cringe knowing that it exists. Because there he is. That complaint was accurate. And he's doing that with children in that video. And that video is actually titled Spokane's Finest, Deputy Craig Chamberlin Training Video. It's on YouTube. He was removed from doing anything publicly for this agency because of his behavior. As a matter of fact, this last October, when he got in front of cameras at our trunk or treat event out in the valley, we immediately had him counseled and told, you will not go in front of cameras again. He was already told that. So how is this guy for 18 years then the face of this agency? I'm pretty sure that the citizens of this county know that there has been one face of the Spokane County Sheriff's Office for the last 16 years, and that is me. If it's a bad thing, if it's a good thing, I am the one that has stepped up and answered to when we get it wrong and to when it's done right. You all know that, and the citizens of this community know that. I'm the one that takes the responsibility for this agency. Good, bad, indifferent. He is not the face of this agency, he has never been the face of the agency, and I wish the media would stop allowing him to go and say that. He did minor public outreach type things. He was not a PIO. Again, there's only been two, Dave Reagan and Mark Gregory. And Craig Chamberlin was removed from any duties in reference to stepping in front of cameras because of his behavior. Craig Chamberlin, that isn't the only position he was removed from. I was also his SWAT team supervisor. Craig Chamberlin was removed from the Spokane County Sheriff's SWAT team because he refused to maintain our standards. Craig Chamberlin has been removed from more things in this agency than he has been part of. So that's the reality. So when you ask me that question, that, you know, how could we have allowed? We didn't allow. We removed him, and he seems to have forgotten that. Just like he forgot many things during the internal investigation. Anything that was against Craig, he couldn't remember. He couldn't remember the name of the detective that he called down trying to figure out what this letter was about. However, when he went in front of the union, he suddenly went, well, I think it might have been Detective so-and-so. When Detective so-and-so found out about that, Detective so-and-so went straight to the IA lieutenant and said, no way. And he was very, very angry that Mr. Chamberlin tried to throw him under that bus. That is the character we are dealing with. Any other questions? Folks, again, I don't like doing these. I don't like these type of interviews. But we have tried to help Mr. Chamberlin for over a decade. And now he wants to paint this agency as trying to wrong him. Now all the facts are out there, you need to judge for yourself. I'm leaving. I am not running for office. And I'm going to say this to all those people out there on multiple fronts that keep saying, well, the sheriff's only doing this because he's running for a different office or higher office. I am retiring. I am moving to Wyoming, and I am going to teach at the college level. That is my goal. So I am gaining nothing from doing this. I'm just simply trying to fight for the integrity of my agency and my community. That's it. And when it comes to the public safety side of it, to the Spokane County or to the Spokane City Council, who like to accuse me of doing things for political gain, no, I am speaking out against you because I am watching you kill my community. And I intend to keep speaking. Thank you, gentlemen.